I'm retired now, but I used to be a truck driver in the late 80s and always preferred working at night. There was something peaceful about driving down those empty highways with only the sound of the engine to keep me company. But one night, I stopped at a truck stop to grab a bite to eat, and that's where things took a turn. As I was walking to the diner, I saw a man stumbling towards me. He looked like he was on something. His eyes were wild, and he kept muttering to himself. I tried to avoid him, but he came right up to me and started yelling. He accused me of stealing his wallet and demanded that I give it back. I obviously had no idea what he was talking about, but he didn't seem to care, just shouting over me, making zero sense. He got more and more aggressive, and I just wanted to get some food and go, so I headed quickly into the diner away from the guy. I quickly finished my food and headed back to my truck, hoping the guy was gone so I could just be on my way. That's when I noticed one of my tires was completely flat. I was sure it must have been the crazy guy from earlier. As I turned to check out the rest of the truck, I saw the guy running towards me from the other end of the parking lot. I opened the door and jumped in. He was now pounding on the door of my truck with a wrench or a hammer, screaming for me to come out. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I called the cops, but they were taking forever to arrive, so I just stayed in the cab of my truck and waited. The man kept pounding on the door and trying to open it. I could hear him shouting and cursing, and I knew that if he got in, I would have no choice but to fight a madman. I don't know how long I was in there, but eventually I heard sirens in the distance. The cops had finally arrived. The man obviously heard them too because he took off running away from the parking lot. When the cops got to me, I told them everything that had happened. They took a statement from me and searched the area, but the man was long gone. I was shaken up for days after that. I couldn't believe how close I came to a seriously violent encounter. It's a scary world out there, and you never know what kind of situation you'll find yourself in. I was driving my rig on a long stretch of highway in the middle of the night. It was the kind of drive that could put anyone to sleep, but then I saw a hitchhiker on the side of the road. I normally wouldn't pick up strangers, but I was fairly bored and he looked harmless. I pulled over and he climbed into the cab. We got to talking and he turned out to be a real character. He had a great sense of humour and we spent the journey chatting and laughing. It was a welcome distraction from the monotony of the road. But then over the CB radio, I overheard police chatter on one of the channels. They were looking for a wanted man who matched the description of the hitchhiker I had picked up. My heart sank as I realised what could be happening. The worst part was, I couldn't tell if my passenger had overheard or noticed that anything was wrong. It's not like I could just say, "Did you hear that?" Then what? So I kept driving and tried to keep my cool, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was about to happen. As the atmosphere grew more and more tense in the cab, as conversation became more sparse. Only a couple of minutes later, I saw flashing lights in the distance. The police had set up a roadblock and were checking all the vehicles that passed through. I tried to stay calm as the police approached the cab and asked us to step out. They took one look at my passenger and immediately pulled him out of the cab. It turned out he was the man they'd been looking for. I was in shock. I had spent the whole night with a criminal and had no idea. My mind raced with all the potential nightmarish scenarios that could have happened. The police took my statement and let me go, but I couldn't shake the paranoia. I had let a stranger into my truck and it had nearly cost me everything. My job is usually pretty uneventful, but one strange thing happened to me a while back that still gives me the creeps. I was on an overnight shift, driving my truck down the highway, the only company being the sound of the engine and the occasional crackle of my CB radio. It was late, probably around midnight, and I was starting to feel the weariness of a long day on the road. That's when I saw the truck stop diner up ahead, all lit up like a Christmas tree. I pulled into the parking area, grateful for the chance to stretch my legs and get a hot cup of coffee. But as I approached the diner, something felt off. All the lights were on, the kitchen was running, and the machines were humming, but there was no one there. No staff, no customers, not even the sound of a TV show in the background. It was like the place had been abandoned in a hurry. I walked around outside, peering into the windows. but there was no sign of life. Even the restrooms were empty. It was eerie to say the least. I decided to wait inside, hoping someone would show up. I sat and read a newspaper that was lying on the counter for a few minutes, before I suddenly realised there still wasn't a sound, not even the clanging of pots and pans from the kitchen. Feeling uneasy at this point, I filled my flask with coffee from the filter jug and grabbed a couple of cookies from the counter. I left a $10 bill and headed back out to my truck. As I drove away, I couldn't get it out of my mind, imagining all these elaborate explanations, but nothing I could think of really made sense. About a month later, I found myself passing through the same stretch of highway. I remembered the strange encounter at the diner and decided to see if it was still open. But as I approached, my heart sank. The diner was closed, boarded up, abandoned. I never found out what happened there that night. It's haunted me ever since. I've heard all kinds of theories from other truckers on the road, everything from a sudden gas leak to a mass abduction, but I'll never know for sure. All I do know is that the atmosphere was deeply unsettling in that empty diner. It was like a ghost town, frozen in time, and even though I've driven that same route countless times since then, I always feel a chill as I pass by that abandoned roadside relic.